Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back, way back, to the banks of the Shipra River, under the clear, patient sky of ancient Ujjain. You're lying on a woven mat, maybe a little itchy, in a city that hums with rituals, silence, and the occasional donkey. Above you, the constellations have just begun to peek out, and they look a bit judgmental. You can smell smoke, sandalwood, something vaguely sweet, and there's the sound of distant singing, maybe a flute, or maybe just someone whistling because they forgot the words. In this quiet swirl of night, you're here for a very noble reason, counting time. With water. And a coconut shell. Yep. This is the age of sky-watching temples and star-mapping monks, when telling the hour could decide the fate of a king's wedding, or at least whether someone got a second helping of yogurt rice. It's all so peaceful, so calm, so accurate, except when it's not. Because when you rely on a leaky bowl to decide the timing of a solstice ritual, well, you might miss the sun entirely. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is by your stars. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're lying on your back in the central courtyard of the Ujjain Observatory. Well, it's more of a platform really, with chalk lines, copper pegs, and one very bored cat. Around you, priests in pale cotton robes murmur quietly, consulting palm leaf manuscripts and occasionally bumping into each other. They walk barefoot, and you start to wonder how often someone steps on a dropped stylus in this place. It seems like a hazard, but no one else appears concerned. The sky above is shockingly clear. There's a faint orange wash from the braziers, but mostly it's just stars, bright scattered, but arranged with a purpose you don't fully grasp. Not yet. An elder gestures for you to sit up. The Vishnudhara must begin, he says, sounding like someone who's said that sentence far too many times. You nod solemnly, which is difficult when your back cracks like dry papyrus. Someone hands you the tools of your new trade, a wide clay bowl, filled to the brim with cool, still water, and a coconut shell polished, with a single tiny hole drilled neatly in the bottom. Your job?
Let the shell float on the water. Let it fill. Let it sink.
Count how many times it sinks.
Try not to fall asleep.
The system is hypnotic, honestly. You place the shell on the surface, and it bobs gently. A bead of water curls in through the hole. Then another.
It's like watching the universe take a breath.
Drip. Drip.
Pause.
Then glub, it dips below the surface. That's 1 unit of time. Not a second.
Not a minute.
Just 1. You remove it, shake it dry, place it again. Around you, others do the same, all in near silence except for the occasional throat clearing or the clink of a ring against clay. This is called a gati yantra. It's simple, effective, and wildly misunderstood by anyone expecting digital precision.
1 coconut égale 1 gati.
About 24 minutes. But even the ancients argued about that. Physicists still debate whether variations in water temperature, shell thickness, or the mood of the observer could throw off the measurement. Spoiler, they can. That's part of the charm. You're given a ledger, just a wooden tablet really, with scratch marks noting how many gatis must pass before the next ritual chant begins. You're told that at exactly the 3rd gati after the rising of Rohini, the morning star, the head priest must light incense. Not a second before.
Not a second after. So, no pressure. You watch the star above.
The nakshatras are shifting, those lunar mansions, little constellations that divide the sky into personality-filled neighborhoods. Each with its own vibe, its own ritual, its own taste in incense. Right now, the star group called Ashwini rises over the mango trees. You're supposed to make note of it. Instead, your eye is caught by a bat that swoops directly over your bowl and drops something in it. You will now have to pretend that bat guano has no effect on cosmic timing. You suspect the elders have seen this before. A few paces away, another apprentice sneezes and knocks over his bowl. The head priest glares but says nothing. You can almost hear his inner monologue. These children, they couldn't measure an eclipse if it landed in their lap. He is perhaps not wrong. As the coconut sinks for the 6th time, the elder leans down and mutters, "Be precise. The gods have watches. We have shells." You nod again, taking this perhaps more literally than he intended. There is something beautiful about this ritualized uncertainty. These ancient clocks may not be perfect, but they slow you down. Force you to pay attention. You are not racing the hour, just noticing it. Gently. Quietly. Drip. Drip.
Glub. Behind you, Soméon Bégin à chant. The syllables rise like smoke, curling into the sky.
You almost forget to count the 7th drop. But you catch it. Barely.
A little bug crawl across your ledger tablet.
You watch it for longer than you probably should. It seems deeply invested in the scratched tally marks. Maybe it's also trying to time the stars. You two are not so different. A mosquito buzzes by your ear, and you swat lazily, missing by a foot. The head priest notices, but says nothing. You suspect he's judging your form. Now, here's a fun tidbit. Some scholars believe that the early coconut clocks were used not just for rituals, but also for naps. That is, one coconut cycle was a perfectly acceptable nap length for a tired astronomer. You are tempted to test this theory.
The mat is softé now, the night cooler. You let your eyes drift just for a moment. You dream of a temple where the bell ring with every coconut drop.
Where time itself is liquid, curving through the hands of sky-watching sages.
You awaken just as your bowl overflow.
Oops. You quickly reset, hoping no one noticed. But you hear a snort from the next mat.
The bug on your ledger is back.
It might be laughing.
You resume your counting.
Drip. Drip.
Glub.
The pace of the universe continues, coconut by coconut. It is a strange comfort that the stars care not at all whether your bowl is perfect. They shine, they rise, they shift. And you, in your small way, drift with them. You sit a little straighter now, the night air pressing against your skin with that soft, lukewarm weight only moonlight can deliver. Around you, the temple courtyard hums in that peculiar way old places do, quietly alive, as if history itself is breathing. You've barely mastered the art of coconut-dunked timekeeping, and yet, your tasks have just begun. The head priest, who seems to communicate mostly through prolonged eyebrow lifts, taps you gently on the shoulder and thrusts something unexpected into your hand. Another coconut shell, this one chipped along one edge, and a fresh bowl of water. You're promoted. Congratulations.
Your new assignement? Apprentice timekeeper.
Not the lowest rung anymore. You're now responsible for aligning the timekeeping vessels of the courtyard, making sure each one begins its next round in unison. Which sounds straightforward, except for one tiny complication. Everyone starts their clocks based on different star sightings. You begin with your neighbor on the left, a fellow apprentice who appears slightly older but significantly sleepier. His shell isn't even floating, it's listing sideways like a retired boat. You tap it upright, and he nods gratefully, already half napping against a bundle of straw. To your right, another timekeeper insists that his shell must begin its descent at the exact moment the star group Critica touches the northern edge of the temple roof. He says this while squinting upward and holding a small shard of polished copper to his eye like some makeshift telescope. Does that even help you see better? You ask. No, he says, but it makes the priest think I know what I'm doing. Respect. The truth is, these methods, personal, imprecise, sometimes downright silly, are the product of centuries of refinement. There's a system here. An elegance. The shells float at different rates depending on the shape of the bowl, the temperature of the water, and whether or not someone sneezed too close to the edge. And you? You're the conductor of this soggy symphony. You crouch beside the central bowl, the biggest one of the bunch. This is the master clock, carved from a single piece of blackened clay and decorated with intricate carvings of lotus flowers and little dancing monkeys for reasons no one will explain. You dip your chipped shell in, let it float, and breathe. Above, the nakshatras continue their slow parade. Tonight, it's Rohini's turn to dominate, bright, red, and a little smug. Associated with abundance, fertility, and, as one elder whispers, extreme punctuality. You make a mental note to like Rohini. She seems your kind of star. Now comes your real test, coordinating all three bowls, the sleepy apprentice, the copper eye squinter, and your own master vessel, so their coconut shells begin to submerge in sequence. You wait for that moment when the first star of Rohini clears the horizon, and then,
now, you whisper. The shells bob, the water stir, and for one perfect moment, everything align.
The chant begins, low and rhythmic, and you feel it echo somewhere behind your ribs.
Time, for this brief sliver of the night, is your to command.
It's only after this moment of triumph that you realize you've dripped water all down your tunic. You now look like you lost a fight with a very confused goose. No one mentions it, but the sleepy apprentice smirks in solidarity. As the ritual continues, you're given a break, which in temple terms means you're expected to sit silently and stare at the sky without fidgeting. You comply. You stretch your legs and stare upward, your eyes tracing paths between stars. You start to recognize them, not just as dots, but as characters.
Rohini the punctual. Ashwini the impatient.
Mrigashira, who always looks like he's up to something. Here's a fascinating little footnote. Ancient Indian astronomers divided the sky into 27 nakshatras, or lunar mansions, each about 13.3 degrees apart. These were not just astronomical divisions. They were full-blown cosmic personalities. Farmers, astrologers, poets, even warriors consulted the nakshatra calendar before making big decisions. Or small ones. Or any ones, really. One scholar even argued that more marriages were planned by the stars than by the actual people getting married. Physicists still argue whether the nakshatra system should be considered astrology or proto-astronomy. Most just agree it's both, and move on.
You shift slightly, your spin objecting to the cold stone under your mat. That is when the elder returns, holding something new, a hollow reed, a smalling paw, and another coconut shell.
You raise your eyebrows. Are we painting now? No, he says. Measuring. Apparently, your next task involves a bit more creativity, estimating water flow rate using ink dots. You're to mark the inside of the coconut shell at each drip interval. It's not an exact science. The ink runs.
The shell sway.
A breeze picks up, blowing a few of your dots sideways like a very lazy Rorschach test. Still, it works. Sort of. The dot patterns resemble a timeline, a primitive but oddly elegant data log. You feel like a scientist. A very wet, slightly confused scientist, but still.
Sudanli, there's a commotion.
One of the larger shells, a ceremonial one used for lunar measurements, has cracked clean down the middle. Everyone gasps. You're told this is a sign. Of what? No one's quite sure. One priest says it means the moon will rise early. Another claims it's simply old age. A third just says, that's why we don't use jackfruit shells. As you resume your post, a breeze carries in the scent of ghee and roasted rice. Somewhere nearby, someone's preparing breakfast for the dawn priests.
Your stomach growls softly, and you give your coconut a slightly ressent fulglar.
This, you think, is what time tastes like.
The courtyard qui again. The water settle.
Another coconut sinks. The nakshatras shift. You record the moment with a new inked, watching it blur into the previous one.
A slow, celestial connects the dot.
You lie back, arms behind your head, and imagine being one of those stars.
Drifting.
Timeless. Free from bowls, shells, or soggy tunics. The thought makes you smile. Then the sleepy apprentice drops his shell again, and it splashes directly into your face. Cosmic humility, restored. The sky has darkened to its inkiest hue now, a velvet dome spangled with points of fire. You've officially been awake longer than your circadian rhythm appreciates, and your spine is folding into the contours of the stone floor like origami. But still, your coconut floats, and that means time continues. You glance around at your fellow apprentices. The sleepy one has now fully slumped against a temple column, snoring softly through a nose whistle. The copper eye enthusiast has upgraded to 2 pieces of polished metal, binoculars, ancient style, and is muttering something about Aldebaran's angle being a bit smug tonight. You've learned to let this pass.
Your next leçon begin without warning.
The elder gestures toward a set of carved stone lines etched across the courtyard tiles, some wide, some narrow, all pointing in slightly different directions. They fan out like sunbeams trapped in rock. He grunts. Sundials, he says. You blink. At night. He raises one eyebrow so high it could qualify as an eclipse. Turns out these aren't just sundials. They're calibration markers, alignments set centuries ago to help local timekeepers cross-check celestial events against solar positioning. Even at night, moonlight and star placement can be mapped relative to these lines. You suddenly realize, these people weren't just watching time. They were trapping it. You run your hand along one of the lines. The stone is cool and grooved from hundreds, maybe thousands, of such hands before yours. Each line is labeled with a tiny glyph. Most are indecipherable to you, but one looks suspiciously like a goat riding a fish. You decide not to ask. The elder walks you through a bizarre exercise. You place a drop of oil at the base of a particular line, one meant to reflect moonlight at a precise angle onto a nearby copper plate. It works. Barely. The reflection is wobbly and slow, but the oil shines like a tiny sun in miniature. The copper plate glows faintly. This tells you something. You're not sure what. But the elder nods, satisfied. He sits beside you for the first time tonight, resting his arms on his knees. People think time is in the stars, he says, his voice softer than expected. But it's also in puddles.
In shadow.
In things that sink and float. You nod. Mostly because your neck is tired. He continues, our ancestors used water clocks before the gods had names. They built them from gourds, clay pots, even turtle shells.
Et lean closer.
One legend tells of a priest who carved a clock bowl so perfect, it measured time to the blink. Then he blinked, and missed it. You're not sure if that's a joke, a riddle, or both. It does, however, explain a lot about how things run around here. Back at your station, you begin practicing calibration. Your coconut shell is now a test subject in what you mentally dub the Great Sinking Olympics. You try different shell sizes. Adjust the water level. Add a drop of ghee to test its effect on surface tension. It floats longer.
And smell vaguely festive.
This is all in the name of science, you remind yourself, as your fingers become increasingly oily.
One curieux observation. The shell Swiss rouge intérieur sink fasté.
The smooth ones seem to hesitate, resisting the pull. You wonder aloud if smoother shells are more philosophical. No one laughs, but the sleepy apprentice gives a thumbs up without opening his eyes. You record your findings in the mud next to your mat. You'll forget most of it by dawn, but for now, it feels like contributing to the grand project. The project of measuring the unmeasurable. Above you, the star called Ardra has risen. The ancient texts describe it as moist and fierce, which sounds like someone describing a particularly intense hot yoga class. But here, it signals a transition.
A celestial mood shift.
Things are changing, again. The elder tosses you a chunk of hollow bamboo and nods toward a small pile of pebbles. This, you learn, is a sound clock. Pebbles are dropped at regular intervals into the bamboo, producing a soft, rhythmic clack. It's oddly soothing. More so than the coconuts, honestly. Each drop echoes with a faint wooden thunk, like time itself is learning to tap dance. You take turns managing this new instrument, counting silently between each drop. You notice the intervals very slightly with wind, with breath, with whether or not someone across the courtyard sighs dramatically while trying to recite a chant.
Your mind drift.
To other forms of time. To other devices, long forgotten. Sundials carved in rock caves.
Shadow sticks set into the earth.
Threads dipped in oil. Fire clocks, where ropes marked with knots burned slowly through the hours. You once read about a Buddhist monastery that used incense sticks to count time. Each scent was a different shift, lavender for morning, myrrh for midday, sandalwood for meditation. Physicists still argue whether some of these methods truly counted time, or simply ritualized intervals.
You don't care.
They were beautiful. Back in the courtyard, you watch as the pebble clock is passed to a novice barely tall enough to see over the bamboo. She drops the first pebble, misses, and it bounces dramatically into the elder's lap. He doesn't flinch. This man has seen centuries of pebble-related drama.
A brise rises. It's cold now.
You pull your shawl closer, grateful for the warmth and half hoping for tea that will never come.
Sommière, à Kokug.
You finish your shift just before dawn, your hands stiff from water and repetition. You look down at your final coconut, still dripping from its last glub, and realize you've named it. Sankha.
A noble name for a noble ORB. You whisper good night, or good morning. Tous en cas and place it gently back in the bowl.
You suspect you'll see it again tonight. The sky is lightening. The nakshatras begin to fade into the dawn, like ghosts retreating to their celestial rooms. You're instructed to lie back, to rest before the day's duties resume.
The stone is less cold now.
Your muscles remember the curve of it. You watch as the sky shifts from indigo to deep blue to something approaching hopeful.
You think about time.
How it drips.
Ah oui, t'es chaud.
How it floats in coconut shells and lands in bamboo tubes and slips quietly into morning. You close your eyes just as the copper plate catches its first kiss of sunlight. You wake to the soft clatter of a pebble being dropped, not into a bamboo tube this time, but onto your foot. You flinch, then remember where you are, still in the temple courtyard, still surrounded by bowls, shadows, and sleepy would-be physicists. The sky is fully lit now, though the sun has not yet climbed over the palm trees edging the compound. It's that gray-gold glow that tells you the gods are almost back from their celestial errands. And your first thought?
You miss the star.
The elder is already up and walking between the bowls, muttering to himself. He's marking the drift lines, tiny water trails left as bowls evaporated or were disturbed by wind, frogs, or wandering cats. Yes, apparently there's a temple cat named Wavelength, who enjoys napping in the water troughs. You haven't seen her yet, but you respect her priorities. The day's tasks shift now. The coconut shells are rinsed and set to dry. The ink dots from your time chart have blurred into abstract art. One apprentice insists it looks like a horse. Another says it's clearly a sleeping mongoose. You all agree it's probably just time in disguise. This morning's focus is recalibration. A word that sounds precise but in practice is more art than math. You're instructed to clean and refill the primary measurement bowls with water from a specific well at the edge of the temple garden. The well is shaded by neem trees and surrounded by old prayer flags that flutter lazily in the breeze. On the way there, you pass by a cluster of stone carvings, ancient astronomical tables, partially eroded, still legible in patches. The elder points to one, squints, and says, "That's where we used to record eclipse cycles, before the goats chewed off the bottom half." You nod solemnly. The goats, it seems, are both sacred and deeply inconvenient. The water from this well isn't just regular water.
It's what the elders call calme water.
It's denser, cooler, and less prone to agitation. You're told it's because the well was dug along a geomagnetic line, or because it's near an old banyan tree, or because it's Tuesday. Explanations vary. Still, you dip your jug, watching the surface settle into a mirror of sky and branches. You pause, noticing your reflection ripple alongside the gentle arc of a dragonfly. This moment feels unreasonably profound. You carry the jug back carefully.
No splashing.
No shortcuts. The water is sacred, or at least annoyingly specific. Once back in the courtyard, you and a few others begin resetting the system. You pour the new water slowly into the primary bowls, careful not to disturb the sediment at the bottom. It's a delicate operation, and for a moment, everyone works in perfect silence. Then the sleepy apprentice drops his shell. Again.
You catch it mid-bands. A small victory.
You don't even gloat, too tired. The calibration process continues. Shells are weighed against tiny stones to balance their sink rate. One apprentice uses a goose feather to dust the inside of a vessel. Another gently blows across the surface of the water to test its temperament, which mostly just makes him dizzy. Still, the cumulative effect is impressive. One by one, the clocks are reset. And when the final shell floats and holds steady, the elder nods.
Now comes something unexpected, the shadow test.
You're led to a wall marked with vertical notches, some shallow, others deep, all carved into the temple stone long ago. These notches aren't decorative. They're part of a rudimentary light calibration system, used to align solar time with the water clock system. Here's how it works. You place a small stick, roughly coconut length of course, in a marked spot near the wall. As the sun rises, it casts a shadow that slowly climbs the stone face. When the shadow hits a certain notch, it should coincide exactly with the water clock's midpoint sync.
Simple, right?
Wrong.
Because clouds. Clouds drift lazily across the sky, smudging the sun like a sleepy child's finger painting.
You squint.
The elder squint.
Everyone squints.
The shadow shift. The coconut drift.
You begin to understand why ancient timekeepers were also very, very good at guessing. Physicists still argue whether this counts as accurate timekeeping. The elder murmurs beside you, sipping something that smells suspiciously like cardamom tea. You watch as the shadow finally hits its mark, more or less. The coconut sinks. More or less.
Everyone cheer.
Definitely. This is how civilizations told time before quartz or batteries. with shadows and shells and the occasional helpful goat.
Iute cabrec beneat a frangipanitri.
Its blossoms have scattered across the ground like bits of moon. You pick one up and twirl it between your fingers. The scent is faint, floral, oddly nostalgic. You think of all the mornings that began this way, long before yours. You feel connected to them now, not just the people, but the act itself. The ritual of watching time unfold, drop by drop. Back in the courtyard, a new lesson begins. The elder unrolls a long strip of woven palm leaf covered in dark script. It's a star chart Vedic style, beautiful and confusing, like a bedtime story told backwards. He points to a sequence of dots arranged in a spiral. That, he says, is the sky during the winter solstice, when the nakshatra called Pushya rises just before dawn. You try to follow the spiral. It loops. It curls. It disappears behind a coffee stain and reappears near what you think is a diagram of a turtle. You're told this chart was part of a larger system, one used to predict eclipses, monsoon onset, and best dates for temple repairs. You ask how accurate it is. The elder shrugs. Depends on the goat. By now, your coconut, Sangha you still remember, is back in rotation. This time it's in the central ceremonial bowl, floating proudly. You feel a little thrill, watching it bob, as if it knows it's graduated to prime time. The ceremony that follows is subdued, a single priest chanting softly, the rest of you sitting in a circle, watching the bowl. A single drop of water falls from a hanging thread, landing with a faint plip against Sangha's surface. This is the start of the next cycle. And with it, your shift begins anew.
You don't mind. Not anymore.
By now, your legs are somewhere between numb and mildly philosophical. You're not sure whether it's the stone floor or the steady rhythm of time-keeping rituals, but your body seems to be settling into the frequency of the place. If someone were to tap your head, you suspect it would echo like a well-tuned clay pot. The morning breeze has sharpened. Coconut trees sway overhead like sleepy metronomes, and the temple courtyard smells faintly of warm earth, crushed hibiscus, and something you can only describe as ancient paperwork. You have returned to your water bowl. Sangha is floating steadily, noble as ever, and it's time to learn something new. The elder doesn't announce lessons. He simply appears where you weren't expecting him, gestures vaguely, and walks off. It's an effective technique, if your goal is to confuse and inspire simultaneously. This time, he leads you toward the edge of the compound, where an unusual stone platform sits just above the treeline. Here, on this slightly lopsided perch overlooking the forest, lies a curious contraption, a wide circular frame made of dark wood, suspended horizontally like a dinner plate for giants. Strings stretch across the circle in a web of tight, radial lines. Small beads, made of bone, shell, and polished seeds, hang along the strings. This, the elder says, is the sky clock. Of course it is. You're invited to lie beneath it, to look up through the gaps in the strings. As you squint, you begin to see how the patterns above mirror the sky itself.
The central bead marks polari.
The radial strings follow key declinations. The outer rim matches the celestial equator, more or less. The beads can be slid along the strings to match the stars' positions at different times of year. It's a physical star chart, a kind of ceiling sundial, a woven map of constellations. It creaks in the breeze, which gives it a slightly haunted charm. You're told that when the moon rises to a specific point, just grazing the left shoulder of the Hunter constellation, as marked by a carved mango pit, the ritual bell will ring, and you'll begin your moon alignment drill. Moon alignment drill? You barely have time to groan. But the drill is, surprisingly, peaceful. You and your fellow apprentices line up beside small bowls, each one filled with water dyed gently with crushed flowers. Blue from butterfly pea, gold from marigold, a sort of romantic pink from hibiscus petals. The colors don't change the mechanics, but they help visualize reflections.
You tilt your bowl towards the sky.
Slowly, carefully, you adjust the angle so that the moon's reflection rests perfectly in the center of the dyed surface. When you manage to align it, just right, you whisper a single syllable, bindu. It means point. But also dot, moment, origin. It's oddly satisfying. Like clicking a puzzle piece into place you didn't know was missing. You spend over an hour doing this. Your back protests.
Your knees crack.
You drop one bowl, not Sangha, and it rolls unceremoniously down the temple steps. You laugh. Even the elder chuckles. which is probably a once-a-decade event. As the moon climbs, you're given your next challenge, predicting when the moon will pass behind a specific tree branch on the horizon.
This is where timekeeping meets storytelling.
The elder gestures to the branch, one you'd ignored until now. When the moon touches that fork, you'll have exactly 119 breaths to prepare the next bowl.
You're skeptical. You time yourself.
It's closer to 132 breaths, assuming you don't yawn too much. But you try anyway. The time slips by in breaths and glances, beads of water sliding down the sides of your bowl. You learn to measure moments not by minutes, but by motions. How many times your shawl flutters, how far the shadows have crawled, how often the sleepy apprentice forgets his place and has to start over. Physicists still argue, the elder says quietly, whether these methods measured time or simply gave people an excuse to slow down. You pause. That might be the most profound thing you've heard all day. Lunch is late. You chew slowly on a slightly stale piece of sweet flatbread and sip from a clay mug filled with tamarind water. Even your meal is humble and slightly fermented, like everything else here. Back in the courtyard, the next phase begins: comparative clocks. This, the elder explains, is when you align two different timekeeping systems, say, a water clock and a sundial, and chart their arguments. The phrase makes you smile. Clocks arguing feels right. You can practically hear the coconut shell saying, "I sink with dignity," while the sundial snaps back, "I cast real shadows." You are assigned the water clock again, this time with an added twist. You must track when it diverges by more than 10 seconds from the sundial. 10 seconds. You scoff at the challenge, until it happens. You sit. You track. You note. And then, inexplicably, your shell sinks early. By 12 seconds. You gasp, as if you've just watched a soap opera plot twist.
Auteur rush au vert.
It becomes a minor scandal. Was the bowl unevenly filled? Did a bird sneeze nearby? Did someone accidentally breathe too hard?
No one knows. You shall it up to the mystery of time. Or michi vous got.
Later, you're given your final challenge for the day, constructing a floating clock from scratch. Using only a shell, a piece of string and a smooth stone, you must replicate the sync timing of your original coconut. It's a test of understanding, patience, and possibly self-control.
You do your best.
The result is acceptable. The shell floats slightly sideways, but sinks within a reasonable window.
You name it Mini Sanka.
It does not have your original's grace, but it tries. And trying here is enough. As the sun dips low and the shadows stretch like sleepy cats across the courtyard, the elder gives a final nod. Tomorrow, he says, we'll learn how to tell time from birdsong. Of course you will. You lie back, limbs loose, spine full of temple dust, and watch as a parrot perches on the stone ledge, mimics a human yawn, and then flies off toward the horizon. You're not sure if it's telling the time, but you are certain it's bedtime. You wake before dawn again, this time not because of a ceremonial chime or a misplaced pebble, but because a rooster with questionable pitch control declares war on the concept of sleep. He stands, feathered and righteous, on the temple wall like some kind of poultry time god. His crow is not melodic. It's existential. You try to ignore him, but your eyes stay open. Might as well sit up. The courtyard is soft with mist. The bowls are still. Coconut shells sleep in their troughs, bobbing gently like retired philosophers. It's too early for instruction, too late for dreaming, so you just sit and listen.
And then you release something strange.
The birds are talking. Not metaphorically. Not metaphor as poetic device. No, they are genuinely communicating, in song, in chirps, in that weird cackle the myna bird makes when it sees someone drop fruit. It's a dawn ritual, and it seems organized. Today, you're told, your lesson is ornithochronometry.
Bird timekeeping.
You snort. Of course it is. You follow the elder to a shaded grove just beyond the temple boundary, where several woven baskets hang from tree limbs. Inside each is a perch and a small dish of seeds, occupied respectfully by birds who appear to be on a union-mandated break. One of the apprentices whispers, "This one's Banu." He chirps 7 times when it's the 5th hour. You stare at the small bird, who seems entirely disinterested in your admiration. It preens. It poops. It hops in circles. Still, as the light shifts, something happens.
The bird chirp.
Once.
Pause.
Then 6 more times. You're stunned. You glance at the sundial. It's the 5th hour. You turn to the elder, who shrugs. They just know. This is how ancient Vedic observers kept time when mechanical tools failed or when cloud cover rendered sundials useless. Birds, it turns out, are strangely consistent creatures, especially when you feed them on strict schedules and don't let them read the news. But it's not just any bird. The Vedic timekeeper selected species known for distinct calls at specific hours: the Indian cowill's mid-morning coo, the barbet's noon knock-knock echo, the lapwing's dramatic did you do it call around sunset. You're introduced to them one by one. Each bird has a name, a preferred perch, and an oddly specific attitude. The lapwing is melodramatic. The barbet hums like an old engine. The cowill is, basically a diva. You're given a scroll, handwritten naturally, with time slots and associated bird calls. It's more like a song sheet than a scientific chart. Timekeeping, the elder explains, wasn't just about precision. It was about rhythm.
Harmonie.
A sense of flow between cosmic order and earthly happenings. The birds weren't tools, they were collaborators. You spend the next hour trying to anticipate calls. You miss most of them. Your notes are more doodle than data. But you feel something stirring, a recognition that time is more than minutes and seconds. It's in breaths, shadows, and yes, even in cheeky minor birds who laugh at your drawing of a sundial. Back at the temple, the elders begin preparing for a rare midday ceremony, the Ardra drop. It's timed not by the sun or the moon, but by the position of a particular bright star in the Ardra nakshatra. You're told this event only happens twice a year, and it's tracked with, you guessed it, a ceremonial coconut. But this coconut is different. It's carved with tiny inscriptions. It has a small notch at the base. It's been soaked in turmeric and flower oil. And when it sinks, it signals the beginning of a rainfall prayer. You're assigned the role of drop watcher.
Your job. Watch the coconut sink and report the exact moment it vanish beneath the water.
High pressure? A little. The bowl is set up on a raised platform. Fresh water is used. No dyes. No flower petals.
No distraction.
The elder places the sacred coconut gently on the surface.
Everyone goes quiet.
You watch. The air is thick and heavy, like it knows rain is coming.
Clouds cluster at the edge of the sky.
The birds have gone mostly still, as if they too are watching. Or sleeping.
The coconut wobble.
Tips. Corrects itself.
You don't blink.
A few drops of wind stir the water. And then, without fanfare, it dips. Down. Gone.
You raise your hand.
The elder nods.
The chambéjin.
The ceremony is short but precise. Flower garlands are dipped in water and hung from the temple gates. Saffron rice is scattered across the courtyard. A priest hums a rising scale that sounds, somehow, like thunder in slow motion. Afterward, someone hands you a mango leaf soaked in lime water. You chew the stem. It's bitter, cleansing, and somehow refreshing. Later, while helping clean up flower petals and slightly soggy sandals, you overhear a debate among 2 younger apprentices. But what if the Ardra coconut sinks too early? One asks. Then the monsoon comes early, the other replies. But what if it's just a heavy coconut? They pause. Shrug. Physicists still argue, one says, whether any of this was science, or just really poetic meteorology. You smile. Even poetic meteorology has its place. As the sun begins to lean westward, you're allowed a short rest. You find your favorite spot beneath the neem tree, where the shade is deep and the ants are only moderately aggressive.
You lie back, close your eyes, and let your thoughts drift.
You think about coconut shells and songbirds, about clocks that argue and goats that chew through star maps. You think about how time here doesn't tick. It sways.
It breath.
It drops, like a shell into water, perfectly imperfect.
And then you doze off. When you wake, Someones drawn a moustache on your face in sandalwood past. You don't even mind.
You wake to the sun casting a soft glow through the neem leaves, your face still sporting the faint sandalwood mustache, an unspoken badge of honor among the apprentices. The morning feels slow, inviting you to rise without hurry. The temple courtyard hums quietly with the early stirrings of ritual and routine. Today's lesson is a return to the basics. measuring time with shadows. The elder, ever fond of blending simplicity with subtle complexity, calls it gnomon dance.
Euroskeptical. Shadow.
That's the old news, you think. But you know better than to underestimate these ancient methods. The sundial here isn't just a flat disc with markings. It's an intricate stone column rising from the center of the courtyard, topped with a finely carved spike, a gnomon. Around its base, concentric circles etched into stone catch the shifting shadow throughout the day. The circles represent seasons, hours, and even the solstices. It's as much a sculpture as a timekeeper.
Yuknel bezit the column, feeling the stonescul rugnek beneat your finger.
You watch the shadow stretch and shrink, creeping along the circles like a lazy cat. The elder explains how, long ago, Vedic astronomers observed the sun's path to predict not just time of day, but the rhythms of agriculture, festivals, and even weather. The shadows were their silent guides through the cosmic dance. You try your hand at marking the shadow's tip at specific times. You sketch in the dirt alongside the column, making crude lines that you hope will capture the subtle movements of sunlight. But it's harder than it looks.
Clouds shift, birds dive, and the breeze flickers the edge of your sketch.
You find your focus wandering. That's when the elder shares a curious story. He tells you about a rival temple nearby, where the gnomon was shaped like a serpent. Legend says that priests there believed the serpent's shadow could swallow bad omens, protecting the people from misfortune. You can't help but chuckle at the thought of a shadow snake. But the story lingers in your mind, the idea that a shadow, something so fleeting and intangible, could be thought to have power. You learn that the gnomon's height and angle were meticulously calculated to align with the latitude of the temple's location. Even tiny miscalculations would throw off the readings by hours over the course of the year. It's humbling to realize that these ancient engineers understood geometry and astronomy well enough to build functional, durable clocks without clocks. Later, you're introduced to the shadow play competition. Each apprentice must predict the exact moment when the gnomon's shadow will align with a particular mark on the stone, marking the midpoint between the summer solstice and equinox. You're handed a simple bamboo stick to measure angles, a practice tool for what feels like a rite of passage. You squint at the stone, estimate the angle of sunlight, and wait. Time slips by slowly. You count your breaths.
You recale how the water clock sank juste à bitterly yesterday.
You wonder if your shadow dance will be precise or pleasantly off.
The elder watch, amused.
When your shadow finally brushes the mark, you exhale a breath you didn't know you were holding.
It's almost perfect.
A few seconds off, but close enough to earn nods. The competition fades into laughter and light teasing, as someone accidentally trips over a stray sandal, sending a shower of dust and apologies. Amid the camaraderie, you overhear the elder mention that some physicists still debate how ancient shadow clocks influenced later European sundials. Was it direct knowledge transfer, or parallel invention? No one knows for sure. You think about that, how knowledge travels like water, seeping through cracks, sometimes overt, often mysterious. The day ends with you helping to polish the stone column, smoothing its surface with a cloth dipped in turmeric and oil. The stone glows softly in the evening light, almost as if it remembers all the shadows it has cast across centuries. You lean your head against the column, feeling its cool presence. For a moment, the boundary between past and present blurs.
The sun deep below the horizon, and the shadow disappear.
You smile. Time, you realize, is a story told in light and dark. You're still humming with the rhythm of shadows when the elder beckons you toward a cluster of low huts at the temple's edge. Inside, a variety of simple instruments await: curved metal rods, polished stones, and a curious device that looks like a small cage made of bamboo and string. You'll learn about Vedic sound clocks today, the elder announces, voice low and conspiratorial.
Timekeeping through sound.
Or, as some call it, nada kala. You raise an eyebrow.
Sound clock?
This promises to be an adventure. The elder hands you a slender bamboo tube capped with a small membrane stretched tight like a drumhead. This is the mridangam whistle, a simple instrument designed to produce a steady, repetitive tone when air is blown through it. The idea is to measure time by counting these steady beats, like an ancient metronome. You blow gently, producing a soft, steady hum that seems to vibrate with the temple's quiet energy. The elder demonstrates the traditional practice. An apprentice counts the beats while performing a set of slow, deliberate rituals: pouring water, arranging flowers, lighting incense, each synchronized with the pulse of the sound. It's mesmerizing. The repetitive tone creates a hypnotic backdrop, the rituals become a dance, and you feel the world slow down. It's like time becomes something you feel as much as measure. You're told that in earlier eras, before mechanical clocks, such sound devices helped monks and scholars keep time during meditation or astronomical observations, especially on cloudy days when shadows and stars were hidden. You attempt your own ritual, blowing the whistle steadily and counting beats.
Your brise falte. The tonneau vert. You try again.
And again. It's harder than it looks, but oddly calming. Nearby, a younger apprentice plays a different instrument, a set of tuned stones that produce a delicate bell-like ring when struck in sequence. He explains these stones mark different hours and festivals. The tone changes subtly through the year, echoing seasonal shifts. You listen closely, imagining how this sonic calendar might have guided farmers, priests, and wanderers alike. The elder shares a quirky story. During a particularly noisy festival, a group of physicists debated whether a certain set of stones could sing harmonics unintentionally, creating what might have been the earliest form of polyphonic music. Physicists still argue, the elder says, whether the harmonics were intentional compositions or just happy accidents of nature. You smile, imagining ancient scientists as accidental musicians. Later, the elder introduces you to a more complex sound clock, a water drum. It's a wooden barrel partially filled with water, with a stretched membrane on top. Striking the drum produces a deep, resonant beat, whose frequency changes as the water level lowers. By monitoring the drum's tone, timekeepers could estimate how long the water had been draining, a clever blend of acoustic physics and practical timing. You try tapping the drum, noting how the sound deepens and shifts. It's oddly satisfying, like the drum is speaking in a slow, secret language. The afternoon wanes with more stories of sound clocks used in temples from distant regions, some involving giant stone chimes, others wooden tubes hung from trees. As you sit quietly, listening to the temple sounds, bird song, rustling leaves, distant chants, you realize that timekeeping isn't just about instruments or numbers. It's about rhythm, presence, and the space between beats. The elder's parting words linger in the air. Time is music. Sometimes, you just need to listen carefully.
You lie back on the cool stone floor. The whistle still humming softly in your fingère, and let the gentle vibration lull you toward a peaceful rest. Morning light spill softly through the temple's open windows, casting long, golden beam across the courtyard.
You awaken to the scent of jasmine and the distant murmur of monks chanting, just enough to stir the mind without fully waking it. Today, your focus turns to the skies. The elder leads you to a quiet hillock just outside the temple grounds, where a rudimentary but clever device awaits, a wooden frame with a thin wire stretched taut, topped by a small disc carved from dried coconut shell. This is the Vedic heliometer, an ancient tool used to measure the sun's altitude and track its journey through the sky. You run your fingers over the smooth coconut disc, noting the delicate markings etched along its edges, tiny notches representing degrees of arc. The wire casts a slender shadow across the disc, and you are instructed to observe how the shadow's position changes as the sun climbs higher.
As you watch, the sun's glow intensify, warming your skin. The coconut disc's shadow slides steadily, a silent marker of time and space.
You feel a serene connection to the ancients who relied on such simple tools to unravel cosmic mysteries. The elder explains how Vedic astronomers used these measurements to calculate important dates, like solstices and equinoxes, critical for agricultural cycles and festival timings. You take a deep breath and attempt to estimate the sun's altitude yourself, aligning the wire's shadow with the disk's markings. Your first tries are clumsy, but the elder smiles kindly, reminding you that precision comes with patience. Nearby, a young apprentice points to a series of small water clocks set along the hillside. Each bowl is carefully filled and calibrated, with floating coconut shells serving as markers for elapsed time. The elder remarks that the combination of solar and water clocks allowed ancient timekeepers to cross-check their measurements, a practice not unlike modern scientific methods. Suddenly, a gentle breeze rustles through the leaves, carrying the faintest scent of sandalwood incense. The moment feels suspended, timeless. The elder recounts a curious anecdote about the solar coconuts hollowed and polished, then painted with sun and moon motifs, used as mnemonic devices for recording seasonal cycles. You imagine these small objects cradled in the hands of scholars long ago, bridging the tactile and the celestial. As the sun rises higher, you notice the wire's shadow shift with surprising smoothness. The process feels like a slow dance between earth and sky, marked by shadows and shells, breath and balance. You ponder the precision that Vedic astronomers achieved without telescopes or computers, relying instead on keen observation, handcrafted tools, and an intimate understanding of nature's rhythms. The elder's voice softens. Physicists still argue whether these measurements could predict eclipses with accuracy, but what they did achieve is undeniable, a calendar rooted in the very fabric of the cosmos. You take one last look at the humble heliometer, its coconut disc gleaming in the morning light, and feel a gentle peace settle over you. The afternoon settles like warm honey over the temple grounds, and you find yourself drawn to a quiet corner near the lotus pond, where an assortment of curious devices rests on a low wooden table. Today, the lesson is on the mysterious Vedic tides and time, and how ancient physicists sought to link lunar cycles with earthly rhythms. The elder gestures toward a set of small bowls filled with water, each carefully balanced on a bed of sand. Floating atop each bowl is a delicate coconut shell, carved with intricate symbols that represent phases of the moon. You're invited to observe the subtle movements, the tiny, almost imperceptible bobbing as the shells respond to changes in the water's surface tension. It's said that ancient Vedic scholars noticed the moon's influence on the tides long before modern science confirmed it, using such simple setups as experimental models.
You lean in closer, watching the shells sway in slow harmony. The ripple remind you of breathing, a natural rhythm connecting the cosmos to your own pulse.
Nearby, the elder shares an amusing story of a particular physicist who once tried to predict tidal movements using only the behavior of temple goats grazing near the riverbank. The goats were surprisingly reliable indicators, their restlessness apparently correlating with rising tides. Physicists still argue, the elder remarks with a smile, whether those goats were early meteorologists or just impatient eaters. You laugh softly, imagining a goat wearing a tiny meteorologist's hat.
The conversation tourne to the practical side of these observations.
Vedic farmers and fishermen relied on lunar timekeeping to plan their work, planting, harvesting, fishing, all guided by the dance of the moon and tides. You're handed a simple abacus-like device made from bamboo and string, used to count lunar days and track the moon's phases. Manipulating the beads feels oddly grounding, a tactile way to connect abstract celestial cycles to everyday life. As the sun dips lower, you watch the pond's surface shimmer with reflected light, the coconut shells bobbing gently like miniature boats on a vast sea. The scene feels like a metaphor for time itself, constant motion within stillness. The elder's voice drops to a soothing murmur. Remember, time is not just numbers on a chart.
It's the rise and fall of water, the pull of the moon, the flute of a bird's wing.
You close your eyes briefly, letting the natural cadence wash over you, your mind drifting toward peaceful shores. The evening air cools gently as you find yourself seated beneath a sprawling banyan tree, its roots twisting like ancient scripts etched into the earth. Here, the elder introduces you to the concept of Vedic astronomical tables, painstakingly compiled to chart the movements of stars, planets, and even the mysterious nakshatras, the lunar mansions. You unfold a fragile palm leaf manuscript, its faded ink forming delicate rows and columns. Each entry corresponds to a specific star's position, brightness, and timing throughout the year. The elder explains how these tables were not merely academic. They guided rituals, agricultural decisions, and even navigational journeys across rivers and seas. You trace your fingers along the script, imagining scribes bent over these leaves by candlelight, their quills scratching out cosmic secrets.
A soft breeze stirs the leaf overhead, as if whispering the secret of the cosmos.
The elder shares a quirky tidbit about an ancient debate. Some scholars argued that certain nakshatras influenced human temperament, a notion that modern physicists view skeptically, but that shaped early psychological theories. Physicists still argue whether astrology played any role in scientific development or was purely superstition, the elder muses. You smile, remembering that curiosity often lives at the edges of certainty.
Nearby, a small brass astrolabe gleams softly in the fading light.
You're invited to handle it, a miniature model of the heavens, with rotating rings representing celestial spheres. You carefully adjust the rings, aligning the device to the current star positions, feeling a tactile connection to the vastness above. The elder notes that while similar instruments appeared in other cultures, the Vedic astrolabe incorporated unique features tailored to the subcontinent's geography. As stars begin to pepper the darkening sky, you lie back, letting your gaze drift upward. The palm leaf tables and brass instruments fade from view, replaced by the real constellations, timeless guides on your slow journey through space and time.
You breathe deeply. The ancient and the eternal mingling in your mind like a gentle lullaby.
The night deepens, and you sit quietly near a gently flickering oil lamp, its flame casting warm, dancing shadows across the temple walls. Tonight, the focus shifts to the curious world of Vedic optical instruments, the subtle art of bending and measuring light using simple yet ingenious tools. The elder presents a small polished piece of crystal shaped like a lens. It's said that ancient scholars experimented with such crystals to magnify images and study celestial bodies more closely, long before the invention of telescopes. You hold the lens up to the flickering lamp and watch as the flame's light bends and twists through the crystal, creating shimmering patterns on the walls. The elder explains that these early explorations laid the groundwork for understanding refraction, the way light changes direction when passing through different materials. You're invited to peer through the lens at distant temple carvings, noting how the details become sharper, the edges clearer. Nearby, a rudimentary camera obscura is set up, a dark box with a tiny hole that projects an inverted image of the outside world onto a surface inside. You marvel at the simplicity and wonder how such a device could inspire future optical discoveries. The elder shares an intriguing story of a Vedic physicist who speculated about the nature of light as both a wave and a particle, centuries before these ideas entered Western science. Physicists still argue whether some of these early theories were intuitive insights or poetic guesses, the elder adds with a knowing smile. You chuckle softly, feeling privileged to glimpse the seeds of ideas that would eventually shape modern physics. The warm glow of the lamp, the bending light, and the whispered stories create a perfect cocoon for your wandering mind. As you relax, the elder suggests you try tracing the path of a single beam of light through the lens with a feather, gentle, deliberate movements connecting observation and thought.
The lamp flicker once more, and you feel the day's learning settle like soft dust in your mind.
The mysteries of light, it seems, are as much about wonder as they are about measurement.
You let your eyes close slowly, the crystalline image fading gently into the quai dark.
A soft breeze drifts through the temple's stone corridors as you follow the elder toward a shaded pavilion filled with curious apparatuses. Tonight's topic is Vedic thermal measurements, the ancient art of tracking heat and temperature with surprisingly sophisticated tools. You notice a small clay pot half buried in sand, filled with water. Nearby, a delicate bamboo tube rises from the pot's rim, its thin walls designed to measure expansion of air within. This is the Vedic thermoscope, an early instrument for detecting changes in temperature, long before the modern thermometer. The elder encourages you to observe how the water level in the tube shifts with the warmth of the sun or the cool of the evening. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, a quiet dance of molecules reacting to their environment. You try placing your hand near the tube, watching for any movement. The effect is small but real. The elder tells you about a forgotten experiment where a physicist attempted to measure the temperature differences in various temple rooms using these devices, mapping heat flow with remarkable precision. Physicists still argue whether these early thermoscopes could quantify temperature or only detect relative changes, the elder muses. You nod thoughtfully, marveling at the ingenuity. Nearby, a set of copper plates sits atop charcoal embers, arranged to study heat conduction. You watch as the plates slowly warm and radiate heat, an early demonstration of thermal transfer. The elder shares a whimsical anecdote. One ancient scholar reportedly believed that heat was a kind of subtle wind, invisible but tangible, a theory that would later evolve dramatically.
You look softly, imagining a scientist chasing invisible breeze around the temple.
As dusk turns to night, you sit quietly, feeling the gentle warmth of the embers mingling with the cool air, a perfect metaphor for balance.
The thermal rhythm of the universe, once mysterious and elusive, now feel just a little more familiar. You exhale, the gentle glow of knowledge wrapping around you like a soft blanket.
Night deepens, and you find yourself seated on a smooth stone bench beneath a canopy of stars. The elder beckons you closer to a collection of weathered manuscripts and simple instruments, a quiet invitation into the world of Vedic experimental physics. You learn how early scholars designed curious experiments to test the nature of materials, how they respond to heat, light, and motion, long before standardized laboratories. One device captures your attention, a shallow bowl filled with water, into which drops of oil are carefully introduced. The oil spreads in thin films across the surface, revealing subtle patterns. The elder explains that this was an ancient method to study surface tension and fluid dynamics, observing how liquids interact on a microscopic scale. You lean in, watching the swirling shapes change as the oil spreads and contracts, like tiny cosmic dances. Nearby, A delicate balance scale crafted from bamboo and stone is used to measure weights with surprising accuracy. You try placing a small pebble on one side and a collection of seeds on the other, fascinated by this tactile approach to measurement. The elder shares a story of a Vedic physicist who experimented with pendulums made from temple bells, using their slow, steady swings to measure time and gravity's pull, a poetic precursor to later studies. Physicists still argue whether these early pendulum experiments influenced later European designs, the elder says softly. You smile, picturing centuries of shared curiosity bridging continents. The atmosphere is peaceful, the night alive with quiet discoveries and ancient wisdom. As you close your eyes, the dance of oil films, the gentle swing of pendulums, and the weight of pebbles mingle into a soothing lullaby.
The physical world, once mystérieux and vast, feel gently understood through simple, elegant experiments.
And you drift, cradled by the calm embrace of slow, thoughtful inquiry. The temple courtyard is bathed in the soft glow of early dawn as you settle in for your final lesson, Vedic timekeepers and legacy. Here, the elder reflects on the long journey of Vedic physics, from simple water clocks and coconut shells to complex astronomical systems, and their enduring influence. You listen as the elder recounts how these early methods of measuring time and space laid the groundwork for later innovations, both within India and beyond. The delicate balance of observation, ritual, and experimentation created a rich tapestry of knowledge. You imagine generations of scholars, farmers, and priests passing down their wisdom, their hands shaping instruments, their eyes mapping the sky. The elder shares a gentle story about a forgotten physicist whose work was rediscovered centuries later, inspiring new thinking in unexpected places. Physicists still argue about how much of this knowledge was shared across cultures and how much developed independently, the elder says, voice tinged with wonder. You think about how ideas travel, evolve, and settle, sometimes quietly, like the slow drip of water in a temple basin. The morning breeze carries the faint scent of jasmine and earth, wrapping around you like a soft cloak. You feel a deep gratitude for the patient minds who listen to the world's rhythms and learn to measure time with water and shadow. As you rise, you glance back at the simple instruments resting peacefully in the temple's shade. You carry their calm, their quiet precision, and their gentle stories with you. And as you step forward, the day begins, not with rush or noise, but with the serene pulse of ancient time.